the Minister for Defence Material.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And as this is one of the last debates before we head off for the Christmas period, can I wish all members, colleagues on both sides of the House, a very Merry Christmas and trust that they have a great New Year and come back safe and sound. This is a revealing debate because the member for North Sydney, the Shadow Treasurer, talked about indulgent dialogue. And for people listening to this broadcast across Australia or people listening to this and watching this in the public gallery, it won't have gone unnoticed that he spent the first 13 minutes of his contribution cracking jokes and talking about the other side, and only spent the last 2 minutes of this debate talking about cost of living. He said that Australians are doing it tough and that there are cost of living pressures, and he is dead right. You can't be the member for Blaxland and not understand that and not appreciate that, because when cost of living pressures bite, when interest rates rise and mortgages get harder to pay, it's in the electorate I represent in Western Sydney that it's often felt harder than most. But there's also another important point to make here, and that is you can't pay the mortgage if you don't have a job. And there'd be a lot more people this Christmas sitting around the Christmas tree without the opportunity to buy presents for their children or to think about a holiday perhaps up or down the coast if it wasn't for the action that this government took. It's important for us from time to time to remember what the position that Australia was in 2 years ago when Lehman Brothers collapsed. Who here would have expected that today we would be talking about an unemployment rate of 5.4%? Who here would have predicted that MyEFO would say that unemployment will go down to 4.5%? At a time when unemployment in Europe is near 10%, at a time where unemployment in the United States is close to 10%, unemployment here in Australia is at 5.4%. And in the last 12 months, we've created more than 300,000 jobs. Now, this is a remarkable figure, and it's a testament to the strength of the economy and the decisions that we have made. To put this into perspective, you need to understand the challenge that would have been confronted to Australia if we had gone into recession and unemployment had gone up to the levels that it is in Europe or it is in the United States. And I state this for members to reflect upon, and everybody listening to this broadcast. If unemployment had gone to 10% like it is in the United States, it would have taken us 5, maybe 10 years to get that unemployment rate back to where it is now, back to where we are now, and all the catastrophe of people losing their jobs perhaps never going back into full-time employment again. Our success, though, brings its own challenges, and that brings us to the focus of this debate. Because we did better than any other advanced economy in the world, we now face the challenges of recovery before any other advanced economy in the world. One of those are skills shortages in a tight labour market. Another, invariably, will be interest rates. If the challenge of the last term of government was to avoid recession, then the challenge now is to manage growth. The budget update, MyEFO, makes that very clear. It shows that new engineering construction is expected to grow by more than 16% this financial year, by 21% in the next financial year. Next financial year, we're going to see the mining industry planning to invest something like $55 billion in new investment. That's the highest it's been in over 40 years. Now, that creates a lot of wealth, a lot of good news for people all around Australia, but it also brings a number of economic challenges. Meeting these challenges requires us to do a number of things. One of them is returning the budget to surplus as quickly as we can. You do this through a spending discipline, keeping spending at a cap level of growth level of 2%. Another is making sure that election promises don't add a single dollar to the budget bottom line. We've done that. We made the promise that all the promises we made during the election campaign would be fully offset, and they will be. But this is not just about spending. It's also about where you invest and how you invest. If you want to keep inflation within the band of 2 to 3% as we set for the Reserve Bank, then the key to this, and this is a debate that won't end here today, it's a debate I'm sure we're going to engage in over the course of the next 12 months and beyond, the key to this is boosting our productivity. This means investing in things like skills and in infrastructure. In short, if there's a shortage of skills in our economy, if there's a shortage of labour, if there's a shortage of infrastructure that business needs, then an economy can't grow as fast as it wants to. And an economy that can't grow as fast as it wants to then creates price pressures. It pushes up prices, pushes up inflation and has a massive impact on interest rates. This is an area, Mr Speaker, where quite frankly the last government, the last coalition government failed. They didn't recognise this challenge even existed before it was too late. Nothing on skills, nothing on infrastructure, and spending growth over the last term of the Howard government grew every year by 4%. Now reflect upon that. I said a spending cap over the forwards of 2%, spending growth in the last coalition government by 4%. And this is what partially drove the Reserve Bank to increase the cash rate time after time after time, where the cash rate ended at 6.75%. Hurt a lot of people and hurt more people in my electorate than anywhere else in the country. I had more people lose their homes because of high interest rates than any other member of this parliament. It got to the point where 60 families a month had their homes repossessed. It was 3 a day. 3 a day. So I understand what the impact of high interest rate rises is, and I understand the importance of a productivity agenda is, the importance of managing growth. In 2007, 10,000 families across Australia lost their homes. This is no small thing. And we as a government, we as a parliament, need to focus on this, the productivity agenda, managing growth. It's not an easy task. It's a very hard task. It's one that the former government failed to manage and one that we are focused on. When we were talking about this in the parliament over 3 years ago, the member for Wentworth said after an interest rate rise that interest rate rises were over-dramatised. That's how much the Liberal Party cared about this issue 3 years ago, and obviously how much they care about it now, given the contribution of the member for North Sydney giving all of 2 minutes of his contribution to this important issue. If they really cared about it, if they really cared about this issue, they would have done something when they were in government, when 3 families a day were losing their homes in my electorate. Interest rates and repossession levels are lower now than they were when the coalition lost office. The RBA would have to increase the cash rate another 8 times before it got back to the level where it was when the Howard government lost office. Another 8 times would the cash rate have to go up. That doesn't mean that people aren't doing it tough. And every member worth their salt knows that when they go out and they talk to their constituents. But what this government will never do is make irresponsible promises. What this government will never do is say that we will keep interest rates at record lows. That's what happened in 2004. The Howard government came out and said, we will keep interest rates at record lows. And off the back of that, people trusted that promise. They went out, invested, got a mortgage, and in 2007, 10,000 Australian families had their keys taken off them and lost their homes because they trusted the Howard government when they said we will keep interest rates at record lows. By 2007, they didn't believe them anymore when they said Australians have never been better off. We would never make a statement like that. What we do is practical things, give practical help. Things like increasing the childcare rebate, increasing the pension, the biggest increase in the pension in over 100 years, introducing practical things like the teen dental plan, expanding the education tax refund so it now applies or will apply to school uniforms, giving more support to families of teenagers by giving them support through the Family Tax Benefit Fund, and of course, come the 1st of January, more help for young mums and dads through the introduction of Australia's first paid parental leave scheme. Now compare that to the opposition. This is a debate about the cost of living. What are their policies? What are their plans? We didn't hear any from the member for North Sydney in his contribution But more importantly, we didn't hear any from the Leader of the Opposition, either in this parliament or in the election campaign. Members might remember tuning into Sky News and listening to or watching the contribution from the Leader of the Opposition with the Sky News Courier Mail debate during the election campaign. And a woman named Tammy got up and asked the Leader of the Opposition what would he do to help with cost of living pressures. His answer was this: "There's no magic wand, I've got to say. I'd like to be able to come in here and tell you that I can make all the pain disappear." David Spears. Just on that, nothing particular that you'll do on the cost of living? Tony Abbott. There is no across-the-board magic that's going to dramatically reduce our cost of living. So the question was asked twice. No ideas, no plans. No wonder the member for Moncrieff in the party room is saying, where are the positive ideas? And it appears to be contagious, because only this week in Western Australia, when the Premier of Western Australia was asked about increasing electricity bills, his response was people should turn their air conditioners off. So that's his response to that. That's his response to cost of living. Turn the air conditioner off.
Why are they increasing electricity?
Turn the air conditioner off. Well, for people who live in Victoria who are contemplating their vote on the weekend, that's the Liberal Party's policy when it comes to cost of living. Turn the air conditioner off. No policies except increasing taxes through their own paid parental leave scheme, refusing to support a tax cut for small business, and talk of returning to unfair dismissal laws or getting rid of unfair dismissal laws. No wonder they are a party that isn't supported by the general public. We're also hearing the return of the debate of the flat tax. The flat tax. The last person that came in here and talked about flat tax was Pauline Hanson. No wonder we're talking about economic Hansonism when we've got the return of the debate about flat tax, which would mean that the average income earner would earn $500 less a year, and people like us would get an extra $4,000 a year in their pocket. So if you're a politician, if you're earning our income, then cost of living might be easier under a flat tax regime. But I tell you what, it won't be for the 60% of Australians that it would affect. It would mean less money in their pocket. And when you're talking about cost of living, it's not only how much things cost, it's how much you can pay, how much is in your pocket, and can be a lot less if there's a flat tax regime that means you get less money, less take-home pay, and a lot less if we return to a system like Work Choices, where more than 1 million Australians earned up to $4,500 less as a result of those changes. The Liberal Party have shown through the contribution of the member for North Sydney that they have no credibility and no argument when it comes to cost of living, but more importantly, shown that it's the Liberal Party that's lost their way. The Liberal Party, to be frank, lost their way a long time ago. If Menzies was alive today, he wouldn't recognise the modern Liberal Party. Because I tell you what, Menzies wouldn't have voted and wouldn't vote against tax cuts for small business. Menzies wouldn't vote against tax cuts for the forgotten people, but this is what the Liberal Party intend to do next year, vote against tax cuts for small business. Menzies wouldn't have taxed Australian business with a paid parental leave scheme, but this is what this Liberal Party wants to do. And Menzies wouldn't have voted against the National Broadband Network. How do we know this? Well, when the biggest nation-building project of Menzies' era came about, when the biggest nation-building project of Menzies' era was about, the Snowy Mountains scheme, what did Menzies do then? Menzies criticised it, he argued about it, he asked lots of questions, and at the end of the day, Menzies voted for it. Menzies voted for it. He acted in the national interest. The same can't be said of his successors. The Liberal Party, Mr Deputy Speaker, looks more like the Tea Party today, the Australian branch of the Tea Party. You've got the Tetley branch in the Liberal Party. The National Party are now the Bushels faction of the Tea Party. And the Leader of the Opposition is more like Sarah Palin than he is like Robert Menzies. As the parliament comes to an end in 2010, the Liberal Party has become a party of the extreme right. No ideas, no solutions, no ideas when it comes to cost of living, just jokes, just 13 minutes. 13 minutes of jokes, and their only agenda is to attack everything and destroy. Given the great challenges this country faces, the people...